Welcome to The Explainer. You know, looking at the next era of space exploration, we have to put on our policy expert hats for a second. Because what's coming? It's vastly different from the Apollo days. These upcoming lunar landings are no longer just scientific endeavors driven by curiosity. They represent a high-stakes, strategic geopolitical land grab. We are watching the foundation of a new American frontier being laid down in real time. And today we're going to visually unpack exactly how this is playing out on the ground.
Okay, let's dive into this. We are looking at a literal geographic standoff. On one side, we have the United States targeting the Shackleton Connecting Ridge for their upcoming Moon Base 1 landing. But directly across the divide, literally on the exact opposite edge of the exact same crater, we have China targeting a ridge for their Chang'e 7 mission, which is scheduled for as early as August 2026. This isn't just about planting flags for national pride anymore. We are looking at a looming territorial conflict over the absolute most coveted piece of lunar real estate in existence.
So, to understand how this totally unprecedented situation will unfold, here's our dossier. We're going to break down the lunar real estate race, take a look inside the Artemis Accords, reveal how drones are staking American claims, analyze commercial proxies and setbacks, and finally, look at securing the lunar economy.
Starting right off with Part 1, the lunar real estate race and the strategic value of the South Pole.
So why is everyone racing to the exact same spot on a moon that's millions of square miles wide? Well, it all comes down to the bizarre lighting at the Shackleton Ridge. Since the moon barely has an axial tilt, the polar regions are just extreme. Up on the highest peaks of the ridge, you've got permanent sunlight. The sun literally never sets, meaning continuous solar power to run a permanent outpost. But take a few steps down into the crater lowlands, permanent shadow, environments that haven't seen a single ray of sunlight in billions of years. And that is the strategic jackpot, because those freezing shadows hide trapped, frozen water ice resources. Limitless energy right next to invaluable water. That combination is exactly why NASA is planning to build a massive city covering hundreds of square miles right on this totally unforgiving terrain.
Moving on to Part 2, let's go inside the Artemis Accords, the diplomatic framework.
While the crater ridges dictate the physical terrain, we've got to understand the rules governing its conquest. The Artemis Accords act as the international diplomatic framework intended to govern the civil exploration and use of the moon. Think of it as the established rulebook for this new era. It's the geopolitical architecture that essentially outlines how nations are supposed to operate alongside each other as they begin permanently settling the lunar surface.
And there's a really prominent number to notice here, 67. As of today, 67 member nations have signed on to the Accords. But, you know, when you're analyzing a geopolitical chessboard, sometimes what isn't there is a lot more telling than what is. The glaring omissions here? Russia and China. Their absence speaks volumes. It paints a painfully clear picture of a divided frontier, where the U.S. is heavily organizing its allies, while rival space powers operate under entirely different paradigms right next door.
Which brings us to Part 3, drones staking American claims and enforcing borders.
Because let's be real, diplomatic frameworks are just paper until you can actually enforce them on the ground. To stake their claim to this massive area, NASA is rolling out some incredibly ambitious new tech. Look at the operational policy for the Moonfall drones. Step 1, they autonomously launch and land. Step 2, they map the surface at a ridiculous 1 centimeter resolution. I mean, that makes our current maps look like blurry napkin sketches. Step 3, they use ground-penetrating scanners to hunt for ice up to 1 meter deep. And Step 4, this is the crucial point, establish a perimeter. If we translate NASA's technical jargon here, positioning these drones at strategic points on the South Pole effectively means these AI-powered prospectors will be drawing de facto American borders. They're setting a perimeter and broadcasting that what's inside belongs to the United States and its allies.
And looking at how this builds into their logistical strategy is fascinating. NASA relies heavily on commercial partners for pretty much everything these days, right? But notice this first point. The Moonfall drones are being developed strictly in-house at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They are absolutely not trusting the tech that draws their physical borders to a commercial startup. Instead, they'll just use a commercial proxy, specifically Firefly's Elytra Dark spacecraft, as an Uber to drop the drones at a low altitude by 2028. And since the drones fly themselves, they don't even need a landing platform to deploy. Now, if there was any lingering ambiguity about the geopolitical intent here, this stark quote from Administrator Jared Isaacman clears it up entirely. Quote,
This will not be a situation like the ISS, where partners actually own and have autonomy over their segments. The moon base will be entirely under American control. Wow, that is a massive policy shift. We are officially pivoting away from the traditional, shared international cooperation we've seen in low Earth orbit, straight into strict, centralized American dominance over lunar territory.
All right, part 4. Commercial proxies and setbacks. The pieces on the board.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the ticking clock. To lock down this dominance, the US is using private companies as literal pieces on a geopolitical board, and the Phase 1 schedule is wildly aggressive. Summer 2026 kicks off with Moon Base 2, using SpaceX and Astrobotic to deliver rovers to the Noble Crater. Fall 2026 brings Moon Base 1 via Blue Origin, testing massive lander hardware. Late 2026 brings Moon Base 3 with intuitive machines targeting the strange magnetic anomalies of the Raynor Gamma Swirl region. By 2029, this entire plan requires 25 total launches and 21 landings, dropping over 4 metric tons of cargo. The pace is absolutely breakneck, and NASA has explicitly stated that the time for making mistakes is over. Total reliability is now mandatory.
But operating at that kind of velocity creates intense friction. Recently, a fully fueled Blue Origin New Glenn booster violently detonated right on the launch pad at Cape Canaveral during a hot fire test. It completely wiped out multi-hundred-million-dollar custom-made infrastructure like the Lightning Tower and the transporter erector. In this new era, a rocket explosion isn't just an engineering oopsie or a corporate setback anymore. When a private proxy stumbles like that, it becomes a massive geopolitical hurdle that directly threatens the nation's timeline against rival space programs.
Finally, let's wrap up with Part 5, Securing the Lunar Economy, the Capitalist Endgame. This really brings us to the ultimate long-term policy endgame. Once those borders are drawn and the landing stick, this is what the sprawling infrastructure of the lunar city is actually going to look like. It is meticulously designed for heavy industry. Landing sites and lunar terrain vehicles, they have to be parked at least a mile away so their exhaust plumes don't just sandblast the habitats with lunar dust. The permanent habitats themselves will strategically command the sunlit hilltops. You'll have nuclear power stations isolated at a safe distance for safety. And down below, industrial mining operations will dig deep into those permanently darkened craters to process lunar material. Make no mistake, this is not a science lab. It is a full-blown industrial complex.
And why focus so heavily on industry? It's all because of this economic anchor. As Administrator Isaacman bluntly noted, taxpayers simply cannot perpetually fund space exploration. For a true spacefaring civilization to take root, private industry has to introduce capitalism to the moon. They literally have to find resources, generate energy, or create commercial value significant enough to offset the astronomical costs of getting there. That capitalist engine, that's the only way this settlement becomes permanent.
So I want to leave you with this to chew on as you watch this new space race unfold. If private industry is absolutely required to build the lunar economy just to offset the costs, and autonomous US drones are already up there drawing physical perimeters in the lunar dust, who truly owns the moon? It's a question of massive legal and geopolitical consequences, and honestly, we're going to have to find an answer for it very, very soon.